Hey, Paul Morrow here. I wrote 3 books. You can get them. Stick with me. Leave some comments below, and I'll be happy to get you copies of my 3 books about money. They're for 3 different generations. I wrote a book about smart financial grandparenting, very specific to those people who want to enrich their grandchildren and their children. I wrote one about the smart financial longevity planning. That's for the midlifers who want to hit that age 100 target, right? And they want their money to last as long as they do. And then I have one on wealth building, right? 5 paths to wealth building for people that are just starting out. So today I want to talk about Vanguard funds because Vanguard funds fit into some of my books, but guess what? Not all of my books. I'm a big fan of Vanguard, by the way, big fan of John Bogle, and I think that the Bogle heads have a lot of good advice about keeping your expenses low, especially in the accumulation stage of your life. There are 3 buckets of money that are important. There's the accumulation bucket, there's the distribution bucket, and then there's a legacy bucket you pass on. Let's talk about the best Vanguard funds for accumulating if you're a beginner. So if you're a person that's grabbing a copy of my 5 Pathways to Wealth book, you're going to see that one of the ways that you can get wealthy is just investing. It's just investing, as Warren Buffett says in his famous biography now called Snowball, that you can just buy good companies, keep them for a long period of time. You don't need to be a trader, be an investor. And if you want to be an investor, Vanguard funds with a little bit of management is a good choice. So if you're a startup person also, their minimums are outrageous and you can start, $100 a month or $200 a month to build some wealth. So for a beginner, I do have to say that you'll hear a lot about index funds and Vanguard 500 index fund, which, by the way, the symbol is VFIAX or VOO is the ETF. Those are just Vanguard S&P 500 index funds. You can do a lot worse than that, and you can put it on autopilot. Start investing on a regular basis and put some money into the Vanguard Index 500. Now, also, I do like the Vanguard Dividend Appreciation Fund. It's VDADX because that's a company fund. The fund is full of companies that grow their dividend every year, that are prosperous and they pay more and more back to their shareholders. So that's a good dividend play. Now, if you're a beginner, if you've watched this channel, I have a theory that if you're a beginner, you should do all this work on your own. I did a whole video about not hiring a financial advisor too soon. For most people, you don't need to be an investment expert if you participate in the Index 500 funds and you start putting your money away young until you get to a number at which you're a little bit anxious. And I would say that number might be 150 or 200,000. When you look at your savings and you look at your retirement funds and you have, maybe close to $250,000, it might then be time to talk to an investment advisor. You might not need a full financial advisor, but the great thing about Vanguard is that they're so inexpensive that you can actually own a Vanguard fund and pay a little bit for an investment advisor. And you're still overall, your expenses are less than buying an expensive fund. Now, there are some expensive funds, I have to say, that are worth it. And in this context, by way of disclosure, I will tell you, these videos are for educational purposes only. And for disclaimer, you should meet with and take the advice of your own personal advisor. But I bought Fidelity Contra Fund years ago. I've owned it for a long time. And Fidelity Contra, FCNTX, is a great fund, but it's not inexpensive. It's not known for being inexpensive. It's a highly active managed account, not a passive account. It's not an index fund. And I do think that the difference is dramatic in expenses. So if you're using Vanguard index funds and you just want to get a little advice on your allocation, you can afford to pay a little bit, a couple of hours to an investment advisor or a tiny bit of fees. You don't need a full comprehensive, financial advisor or wealth manager if you only have $250,000. So in the beginning stage, do it all on your own. Buy some Vanguard funds. Buy some funds that you can read about and understand. You don't need to become an investment expert. You can look up on Morningstar the comparison of a lot of funds. You'll see Vanguard ranked at the top for not necessarily top performance, lowest expenses. And lowest expenses often leads to top performance. It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee that just because a fund is inexpensive, it's going to do well. But I do think that in the case of a startup investor, you need to be frugal about how you spend your money. So Vanguard Index 500, the VOO, great fund to buy when you're starting off. Now, as you get older, by the way, your allocation will change. The reason I wrote 3 books, one about startup wealth builders, one about the ex-geners that are, 40 to 60, and then one about the grandparents, because your allocation changes. And that's what I mean by meeting with an investment advisor. So if you start off in your 20s, you've built up some money, maybe you're in the FIRE movement and you want to really accumulate a lot of money by the time you're 35 years old. So what you don't want to do when you're 45 is lose it. So when you move through the generations and you're in that really kind of middle-aged stage, it's a really good time to take another look at your investment allocation. That's the time that you might add some of what we call the BND, the Vanguard Bond Fund, into your allocation, because a bond fund gives you the ability to build your own balanced fund. You can also buy Vanguard Balanced, right? VBAL, VBAL, or you can build your own with an index fund and a bond fund, right? And why? Why do you do that? Well, when you're in middle age and you want to reduce your risk of losing money, right? You add a bond fund for a little bit of stability. It's kind of like a teeter-totter. And you've got your equities on one side, high risk, high gain. And on the other end, to balance it off, you have a bond fund. It's never going to do super great performance in either direction. It's not going to lose a ton of money. The way bonds work is even if interest rates go up and your bond principal value goes down, if you hold it to maturity, right, it maintains its value. So a bond is a balancing act in your portfolio. Okay. Now, Vanguard is a great fund company and do a lot of things really well. I will tell you though that if you're in the middle stage, the ex-geners, you can do a little bit of investment allocation with them. However, there is a point at which they run out of steam for what I would call wealth management. Now, a lot of wealth managers use some Vanguard funds, but I think that number's around $1 million. So if you're $1 million, if you're, say, 55, you're staring down the barrel of retirement coming up, I think it's time at that point to, unless you're great, hiring a wealth management firm to help you. Now, as you know, many of you listen to this channel, I ran a financial advice firm for 50 years. There are clients that are appropriate to have wealth management services and some that aren't. And one of the main things is, do you have the needs? Is your life complex? Now, if you're a single person, no family, right? You have no children, you have no one responsible. I mean, I think it's stretching it to say that you really need a wealth management firm because you don't really care when you're gone what happens to the money. Now, if you're someone who cares about risk, taxes, estate planning, like these are the parts of wealth management that get important. There's 5 categories of financial advice: risk, investment, tax, cash flow, and estate planning. You'll notice that investment is just one of them. And it's highly, highly important to a single person that they just make money and take care of themselves. When family comes along, the whole picture changes. If you're worried about supporting other people, endowing other people, enriching children and grandchildren, now you're into the people that are in my Smart Financial Grandparenting book. We've worked with them over the years. You'll see some of them in our podcast. It's very important to do some strategic planning about how you enrich future generations. Boy, you can do it the wrong way and you could do it the right way. And I'll give you a little bit of an example about that. I think that Vanguard is a wonderful firm. And I met somebody recently who had literally 100% of their assets that were tied up in their 401k, their pre-tax retirement plans, and they came to us and asked about how they could leave this money to their grandchildren. If you have a retirement fund and you have a goal of leaving money to grandchildren, you have a problem because all that pre-tax money has a tax mortgage on it. And it's very inefficient nowadays with the current tax rules, as I talked to you in 2025, to leave a retirement fund to your 30-year-old grandson who's working in New York City and he's got a great job and he's already in a 60% tax bracket with state and federal and city tax. You're going to leave him $1 million IRA and he's going to end up with $400,000, and he can't stretch it over his lifetime anymore. And you cannot put it in trust because then you end up paying even more because you pay trust level taxes. So it's very important that there's a point at which you tip over from being a do-it-yourselfer to a hiring some help person. You either educate yourself on how to do it or you delegate to someone else. I think that number's $1 million. And most professional advice firms will say they don't really want to take on a client with less than $1 million. Frankly, they don't need to make work up. People have less than $1 million in investable assets often can't afford a firm. They don't have the issues. And frankly, if it's just an investment allocation story, they can use a part-time investment advisor for a few hours every once in a while to check their work. That's a whole different relationship. So if you are looking at my 3 books, if you have stayed this long in the video, as I said, make some comments in the link below. Send us your questions. I'd be happy to answer them. And if you would like a free ebook copy, just go ahead and hit us up online and we'll be happy to downstream to you a copy of one of my 3 books that fits into your life and to your category. So I do like Vanguard funds, and they do fit into a beginner's financial plan to build wealth, a midlifer's financial plan to get income forever, and they can fit into, with proper planning, a legacy plan to enrich your children and grandchildren. But in order to use these funds properly, you need to get a little bit of help. They're kind of like a handgun, and you can hurt yourself without proper training. So getting Vanguard funds is smart, and learning how to use them is just part of the art of being smart.